into this, we have the results of the 2024 Connected Packaging Survey. As I said, this is a live yet recorded session for later on, so you can watch later at your pleasure. But please do ask our fantastic panelists that you can see here on your screen any questions, and we will get to them as we go through. So December, January and February, we were commissioning our survey. Our main objective is identifying the interest, of course, around connected packaging, looking at different areas, different industry verticals, and we'll look at those. These are respondents working in C-suite, advertising, procurement, or similar roles within our network and direct clients across a range of brands. We had just under 3,000 respondents this year. This is 3 times the amount of respondents that we've had in previous years. That, I think, is a fantastic testament to the interest of connected packaging, but also it means that we have a harder time trying to meet the same percentages. As obviously there are more people, it dilutes the answers. However, we have fantastic results for you. Let's have a look at who our audience were. 17.5% were FMCG, 13.5% in marketing, advertising and media, down to retail, 11.4% of respondents, then travel and hospitality and leisure. Always interesting, of course, to look up at the makeup of our respondents. So our big question here, our fantastic big question, first off, is have you used connected packaging as a brand in the year 2023? Now, we see that 81.9% of respondents actually have already used connected packaging. Now, when we asked this question in 2023, we had 81.5% in 2023. So there's a slight increase there, but of course we must remember when we also think about the number of respondents, there is definitely a difference in the number that actually comes to, as well as when we're looking at the percentage. Gunnar, do you have any comments on this sustained slight increase that you can see here in terms of the people who have actually used connected packaging last year?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. I think considering we're still in a difficult environment, right, with all the things going on in the world, still, having issues, supply chain through COVID and everything, I think it's great to see that thought-leading brands still build on the experience and learnings, they made previously to, focus on really a true customer experience and engagement with the brand. So, customers will get to know and get used to it much more. So this is a great stable number considering the difficult environment we have. And I think in the next slides, we'll also see some of the challenges that we still remain on education of brands and so on. But I think this is a major step forward in regards of connected packaging and customer engagement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you quite rightly say. So that means that we've got 80% saying yes. So that leaves us with 18% saying not yet, let's say. So why? Why is that? And we can see that there is a significant number of that 18% saying that their understanding of the technology is missing. And I think that's really big. And then the second one there, 14.7 also, is not sure how to handle the data. So those both are really talking about that gap in understanding. And then again, if you come down, application knowledge is missing. So the largest part there is 42% of participants really talking about education. So still a lack in education there of being able to understand how to do it, how to handle the data from it, and of course that application in technology as well. So technology application and actually how to handle the data. So a big percentage there. Dropping down, too expensive, 11%. We don't know about it, 9%. So interesting, perhaps we could even put that into the education. And then not required for us, only 8.9% there. So again, really, really interesting there. I don't know if you've got any other comments that you wanted to add on that, Gunnar, as obviously you were commenting before.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's almost all like if I add the 14.7 twice, the 11.7, we're not really too expensive. We don't know about it. Like almost all of these really lead to the fact of lack of education and consulting. And I think that's all on us as the industry and experts to do a better job on that, to be honest. Yeah,
absolutely. I've been spending 8 years of my life trying to educate around connected packaging, but I think that this clearly shows that there is still a job to be done in terms of education. All right. So if we move on to the participants who had already implemented connecting packaging, what are they using in terms of the technology, that connection technology? So we've got QR codes, NFC tags, and both. QR codes leading 37.3, NFC 32.5, and actually both 29.9%. So it's quite interesting there, thinking about the different technologies that are open to us. Craig, I don't know if you've got any comments around the application here in terms of the technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is obviously, Domino's data carrier agnostic. We have lots of different two-dimensional codes. There's lots of different ways of making that data available, on the packaging. One of the things that we're seeing that's quite interesting is an increase of the use of QR codes. From a sustainability point of view, it's obviously gives a much better outcome. But also, as we're seeing more and more data elements going into those QR codes, actually they're getting more data rich. So actually, rather than having a single stakeholder with a single sort of outcome, we're seeing those QR codes getting much broader, the use of that, and it allows a number of stakeholders to engage for a number of different reasons and a number of different outcomes. But there's a place for all of the technology, and I think the key thing is, for me, is rather than focusing on the technology or the data carrier, is starting with the outcome you're looking to influence and then working back. And actually that will then present the best technology or the best mix of technologies that you'll need.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you think there's a trend here moving to the QR code. What do you think, Andrew? Do you think the QR code will therefore maintain its dominance, or do you think we'll see further?
No, I think Craig just said it. Let's look at what you need from these technologies rather than which technologies, because both work very well in their own particular way. I mean, QR codes have come on leaps and bounds in the last few years because of digital printing and data-rich things and the software packages that run behind them. NFC does a job in two-way communication, in they say more security. QR has app-less technologies, whereas NFC tends to be more app-led, or it was, certainly. And there are even cases where you can put both in. So it depends on what you want out of the technology, what you're trying to achieve, whether you want to use one or both. But I certainly see QR going ahead strongly, particularly now that we've got the GS1 data matrix code coming in to play.
Yeah, no, definitely. I massively agree with that. There is a different use for each of the technologies, or for the technologies to be used together. So I think as different industries pick up connected packaging,
I think it's interesting, Jenny, that there's such a balance there in that figure. You had a much bigger sample, but there's a nice balance there of people looking at the various technologies.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with that. It's really interesting. I just want to quickly go back to Mary's question on the previous. So she asks, is 14.7 out of that 18.1% that had not used connected packaging? The answer, Mary, is yes. It's the 14% of the 18% who had already said that they hadn't yet used connected packaging. All right, so moving on to our next question. If you do use connected packaging, why? Why do you consider it important? We can see here informing about the product and marketing decisions is the biggest one, 16.5. Data collection very, very close behind. In fact, they're all pretty even at the top there. A direct interaction with customers for 14%. Education of customers then at 13%. And then 11% talking about this being a sustainable way to interact with customers. So obviously this is something where we are using connected packaging to educate consumers. It's a communication channel. So I'm not very surprised particularly about these answers. But Ali, I don't know if you want to comment anything about the answers here and the secret weapon of connected packaging.
I mean, informing about the product goes with informing about, if you like, the packaging as well. If we're talking about getting into recycling and how to educate people about how to use the product and how to dispose of the packaging. So that sort of goes in train with it. Data collection, we've been hammering at AIPIA now for so long that, you know, we're now giving people loads and loads of data. It's what we use it for that's the important thing, and how we share it amongst our other stakeholders, whether that be internally or externally. The other thing that we find vital is this educate customers. I mean, I think looking at your 18.1%, we need to educate a few of the people who are obviously sitting in a darkened room with actually no reality in the outside world anywhere, because I find it incredible that, you know, customers don't use it. Well, the only reason that some customers don't use it is because a lot of people don't know it's there because we don't educate them enough. So, you know, it's cart before the horse sort of thing. And that sort of frustrates me a little bit. But all those things are absolutely banging where we're doing our work at AIPIA to try and educate people, use the data better, have a sustainable way to connect with customers and inform them about the product. It's all there.
Yeah, definitely. Ali from Tetra Pak, anything you want to mention here around, you know, the importance and the use of connected packaging?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Andrew on the importance of education, not only on the consumer side, but on the manufacturer side as well. Marketing teams, because you use QR codes and connected packages in various areas, supply chain to improve supply chain operations, sustainability to get your sustainability impact. But marketing teams in particular need to update themselves. They need to be aware of digital trends and how they can use consumer behavior data, such as scan data or time data, when the person has scanned it, who has scanned it, what type of media are they scanning it with, to improve their marketing campaign, to target better, to improve their products. Not just use that data for, you know, bland advertising. Do better advertising, make better products, connect with the customer in a more engaging way, and then, you know, just have a overall better connected experience with them.
Yeah, I mean, what you say there as well about using the data kind of goes back to the question where there was a percentage of people, I think 14% out of the 18%, who didn't know what to do with the data. And I think you're quite right. It's not necessarily just about doing a marketing campaign and getting first-party data for your CRM, but also understanding what that data is telling you. So you can ask questions, you know, when do you consume the product? How often do you consume the product? What flavor would you prefer? Do you prefer this or that? Which obviously can help you with innovation, and really kind of moving that data and bringing that data back into improving the product, improving the experience, or whatever that might be. So I think you've raised some really good points there in terms of understanding how to use that data as well.
And I would have to say, if you're working with good partners who know, for example, if you're working with Domino, who know what type of codes that you want, if you're working with good agencies, Jenny yourself, and you have a good marketing strategy in place, I think that you can crack all of these things, because I've talked about it before. Having an interconnected industry helps really using that data, really helping it out. We've had discussions with Craig and you over the time on how we can use the data, how to better improve connectivity and the connected experience on an industry level as a whole. And that really comes into play. You really need everybody working together to crack this education problem that we're having right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably that goes back into a little bit of that technology problem as well, because perhaps you solve one of the problems, which is, can I get the QR code to do what I want it to? So whether that be a marketing campaign or whatever. But then the question might be, you know, how do I actually get the QR code onto my product? And then, of course, you need a printer. And of course, Craig is nodding because, of course, he knows this is the problem where we've come across, where we've been working with customers, but it's actually then bridging that gap on the technology application of actually applying the QR code or getting the NFC tag or RFID tag into it, which is why, you know, trying to close that loop. And, you know, Gunnar, we had a conversation about aligning all the pieces. So, you know, I think this is a really good point about everybody in the production line, so to speak, to be able to deliver the campaign includes all of these different pieces. open for anyone to comment on that, or I'll move on.
Well, do you know what? I if I may add a little comment, I think one of the things that's interesting is not only are the use cases broadening, so actually we're seeing it, the focus used to be factory to consumer, and actually now we're seeing pre-factory, we're seeing, farm to fork type approaches coming in. So what happens before the factory with packaging materials, and DDP is going to bring in a whole lot of granularity for the supply chain of the raw materials. But actually, we're looking also post-consumer, with circular economy. What happens after the consumer? So you're absolutely right, Jenny. When's it consumed? But what happens after you've consumed it? Is it recycled? Is it reused? So it's much broader from a sort of an external ecosystem. The other thing that's really important, and Ali touched on it a little bit, is approaching the project properly. This is not an engineering project. It's not a marketing project. It's a fundamental business change. And actually, if it's done properly with a number of internal functions involved, actually, it's going to be more successful, because you need packaging development, you need the artwork team, you need legal, you need the data people, you need somebody from IT, and you need the people from manufacturing. And if you've got all of those people involved, actually, you've got a really good chance of having a really successful, data-rich, really involved project.
Yeah, definitely.
I would
Can
like
I
to
add
add, I'd like to
go
add,
on,
sorry
Ali,
to
you
interrupt.
go. Yeah.
Having all of these people involved does not make this a complex project. It just makes the success go up, and the benefits are widespread. It does not make this an extremely complex project. We just need to identify the stakeholders so everybody's on board with it. That I would like to add. Just by saying that, you need so many teams to be involved does not increase the complexity of the project. It just makes it easier to deliver, and everybody can see the benefits of it.
And let me just add to the 18% of naysayers, some of which have said it's too expensive. Then what we just talked about is doing a proper ROI, a proper assessment of the way that this technology can actually, in the end up saving you money and meet your ESG goals or your sustainability goals by delivering data and facts and traceability. So, to come out with it's too expensive strikes me as being a complete lack of understanding of what we're trying to tell you about.
Yeah, do you know what, Andrew? Sorry to labour the point on this slide, Jenny, but Andrew, you're absolutely right, and Ali's points are very valid as well. It doesn't make it a bigger project; it makes it a more successful project. But actually, looking at the cost, the use of QR codes, NFC tags for a connected packaging ecosystem, it's coming, whether it's coming from the retailers or whether it's coming from legislation or it's coming from both. So you've got two options. You can either be dragged into compliance and actually you've got all of the pain and none of the gain, or you can do it early. And actually, and it's not going to cost any more. You've got time to trial things and test things and make mistakes before it's too late. So actually, it's really about starting early and doing it properly.
Very, very good points, Craig. Very good points. We talked about costs. Let's look at budget. Let's look at what people are looking to spend or have spent. You can see here, obviously, the different array between the different ranges here. The majority inclined to spend 31 to 50k USD. This year sees an increase actually in the number of participants willing to invest above 51,000. So quite interesting there. Maybe this suggests a shift in priorities. Maybe this also suggests a shift in willingness to be able to do it. And maybe, as you say, Craig, the foresight to see that this is something that's going to happen. So actually maybe giving in to perhaps some resistance that might have been there before. So, I think this does again show substantial positive sentiment towards connected packaging and the growth. Gamification. So here we're looking at gamification. We know gamification is making a big impact. Nearly half the participants, around 50%, have incorporated gamification into their marketing campaigns. 25% thinking about it. This is a great use of connected packaging, not the only, but one of the large uses. Again, we're talking about brands getting closer to their consumers, whether that be for education or whether that be for experiences. And we know that, of course, if you can engage your consumer, if you can invoke some sort of positive feeling, then of course that is going to help with recognition with the brand. So we've got half of the respondents embracing gamification. So this is quite clear to me that this is a strategy for getting their consumers interested, engaged. What do you think, Gunnar?
Obviously, this is the most fun part, all about the work that we do, right? I mean, this is where the fun comes in, and you know, just to highlight, like, some of the most amazing campaigns that I've witnessed in the past were clearly the past is candy dispensers from Zapper, where you had to buy the cartridges to refill, and then you would open up different parts of the game world, or the 19 crimes, right? Making people chase, collect, bother, and many more. So I think it is not only making the next Super Mario game, this is really about simple things that keep people busy waiting at your plane, at your train, you know, engaging with them, giving them, you know, some fun time that, you know, connects directly to your brand. And I think the two most important things that we really see here is keep it within your brand purpose. Like, don't try to be a copycat just because somebody else like Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, or all these companies did something great that was, you know, going in social media roof. And target the right audience, right? Like, it really depends if you're selling bananas as Chiquita, or you're doing candy, or, you know, some organic food stuff. Understand your audience and build something around it that adds value for them to spend time, that also makes them feel good and engage, and that will definitely help you as a brand to keep connected with your customers.
Definitely, some really good points there. Not just being a copycat is a great one, and linking it with your brand. What about the type of gamification? So when we ask that question, what type of gamification do you use? Then we can see here there's a big array between quiz, AR game, and mobile game, and then other at 9.9%. So there is also a shift here. Interestingly, in 2024, we can see that there seems to be more interest in incorporating quizzes than traditional games, which is very interesting, I think, as well. Ali, do you foresee the balance between the different approaches here evolving in the future? What emerging technologies and trends do you see? AR obviously has been one of those. What do you see coming in the future?
Well, AR will continue. It is there. But when you talk about gamification, you really have to talk about why are you using gamification. You want to provide the user a better experience. And generally, when you're talking about gamification, it's that you're not giving them actual, you know, like League of Legends games, or that they're actually involved with that. This is a product that the use is meant to be consumed in a different way. And in order to enhance that experience of that consumption, you're providing a game. So you're giving them a quiz, you're giving them an AR game, and a way to work with the brand. And we should understand that these games will always be casual games, and there's a casual game market for that. The upcoming trends that you will have is that you've got the hyper casual game market coming in. You've got what we call it extended reality with Meta's Quest or the Apple Vision. We're not there yet. It is coming. How soon will it come, and how fast the adoption will be, we will have yet to see. But right now, mobile games are leading it, and the ways that we can use mobile games to enhance that interaction point. But it is a point of interaction after which they will go back to play whatever game that they are actually interested in, comes back. Or in the future, if you have large brand integrations, you could actually make these products part of the actual games that the consumers play on a daily basis, such as, for example, off the top of my head, and Nintendo, please don't sue me, have products within Animal Crossing that you could buy from their stores and make, or those farm simulators or daily life simulators, Sims, for example.
Yeah, absolutely, which could then turn into some sort of loyalty program, rewards, redemption. You're making me think of some really cool ideas, Ali, straight away, about how, you know, if you sell the milk that you get from your cow in your farm game, that gives you coins to be able to purchase the milk at a discount from wherever, you know. So you're making me think of ideas immediately. But definitely agree with that. It's interesting, as obviously we are a connected marketing agency, and of course people ask us for games. Sometimes it's the brand who kind of pushes back and says, "Oh, that's not exciting enough. We want something that's going to be like a PlayStation game." And I think it's also the realization, I'm going to say, this is a casual game that someone will involve themselves for 2 to 3 minutes, which is a very long time for a brand and consumer engagement point. This is not a replacement for a Nintendo or a Switch, and we could always talk about what what one of those games cost, then we might be into the situation talking about connected packaging costing too much. So I think that's a really good point. This is something that will get a micro moment of time with a nice emotion. This is not something that someone's going to spend hours and hours all night every day spending in their bedroom. This is
I think it's worth re-emphasizing, Jenny, what Guneri said at the beginning, which is know who you're targeting and target what you want to do with the game very carefully. Is it about the product knowledge? Is it about entertainment, a loyalty program? Is it about delivering messages about, say, for example, sustainability? I mean, you're more experienced than we are on this particular area, so I think we don't need to tell you how to do it, but maybe the folk who are listening need reminding that if you're going to use something like that, you've really got to actually know what you're about.
Exactly, and it's that value exchange, and I think that's where we really kind of bring, as Appetite Creative, we really bring our experience to the brand, which is to say, we want to do two things. One is that we want to achieve your goal, Mr. Brand, which might be collecting information or delivering a particular message, but the other is that we need to entertain the consumer, and it's a balance between that value exchange that'll get the success to people actually completing the task or playing the game or whatever. And if it's more like a loyalty program, as Ali, you were talking about, well, that's a different type of game. It's going to be a game that's going to have longer engagement times, more rescans and all that type of stuff. So yeah, absolutely. Thinking about what your objective is and what is it that you want to do to help understand what type of gamification will work. There's actually a comment in from Ian Schofield, which I'm just going to read out. He says, thankfully, fully involved with connected packaging on several levels. That's great. I find the weakness at design agency level, not all, who turn in talk to the marketing purse holders. They lack awareness at project kickoff, but thankfully it is changing. What can we do to educate agencies more, as they are often small and fragmented outside of the top 20? Gunnar, you're nodding your head, so I'm going to turn to you for that.
Having worked 18 years in an agency landscape, right? I can relate to. I think even the bigger ones, like I think Ian is mentioning, like the smaller ones, but even the bigger ones, they really lack the connecting the dots. Like when we talk to the brands, agencies, understanding that they're regulatory coming. So in some cases, we're talking not about, would you need it? What would be the benefits? You will have to apply some sort of 2D codes on your packaging, right? GPSR, DPP, and all the things that we are all dealing with. So brands need to talk to their agencies, because usually they're like the first front, right? The agencies are really close to the brands. They take care of the artworks, the packaging, the strategy, the branding. So they need to understand that brands need to already consider freeing up some space in your packaging for a QR code, right? Or an NFC chip, depending on the purpose. What are the benefits? And there's so much room to collaborate. And this is where partnerships are so essential, right? You can be a pre-media agency, still work with Appetite Creative, right? And Domino or any other provider to get things going. And the thing that I struggle with is it will help you to keep a better, even stronger relationship with your brand, because you're turning into a consultative partner, right? You're guiding them through the future, new disruptive technologies. So there's so much value and potential to keep and extend your business as an agency by educating your customers on all of these developments without being scared, having to be scared about losing business. It's actually win-win.
I totally agree with that. And if I might just say, our next month's webinar is actually about design agencies and helping them to understand the placement of the QR code, where to put the QR code, how to design the QR code, thinking about all of those different things. So, Ian, we've thought about you already, and so do please tune into that webinar. But also, as you say, Gunnar, it's about partnerships and bringing the best out. Design agencies are not going to have the data platforms that we have, but they do have the understanding of the brand more than we do. So that partnership helps to bring together the best thing for the client. And again, it's about cooperation and strengths and partnerships, 100%. All right. Thank you very much, Ian. Thanks for the question. So back to gamification, what is your goal? So what is your objective? Again, very much talking about what we're saying here. What is your goal while using gamification? Here we can see that 36.6% are talking about the promotion of a new product or new service. So we can see here the other uses, branding, gathering emails, gathering phone numbers. So, you know, first party data collection, actually, you could perhaps say 27.3 plus 25.1. So that bringing us up over that kind of 50% there as well. And then gathering consumer insights for future campaigns, again, is data. So if I put those three over there on the data side, that's pretty high. So that's the strategy. Again, a broader range of objectives rather than just promotion, which I think, Craig, you were mentioning before. I don't know if there's anything else you want to bring up here. There's a shift in priorities. What do you see as the implications? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, again, what's interesting is, and it's interesting to look at the earlier slide about the level of investment. You know, if you look at those lower levels of investment, that's really just having a pilot or a little, you know, dipping a toe in the water and trying it. What we're seeing now is people doing this properly for a number of reasons. One is, you know, early adopters. The other one is actually, as people have piloted this, they're understanding what the positive benefits are, and they're refining that and developing it. So I think one of the things that will be interesting is actually, I think there'll be some other goals start to appear here as people realize that, you know, there's a number of other potential outcomes, or as the QR codes get more data rich, or the NFC tags get more data rich, is actually understanding the power of connected packaging and actually saying there's a lot of other things we could be doing here. And all complementary things. So actually, it'd be interesting to see over time how many other things start to appear as goals or certainly benefits in this area.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Let's look at the drivers, which again is really interesting here. We've got a lot here drawn to different capabilities. Product package recycling, dynamic pricing capability, obviously the DPP that we've been talking about, consumer promotions, supply chain optimization, authentication, anti-counterfeit, genuine product, recall management, and traceability. So product packaging and recycling is topping up there as the driver for that connected packaging. What do you think, Andrew, about this? You talked about sustainability a little bit before. What are your comments here?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm a little surprised that supply chain management isn't slightly stronger than that, because I think we've identified very clearly that there's a weakness in the supply chain issue across a number of different sectors. And that's one thing that we're working on at AIPIA in a smart food chain project. But, you know, they're the usual suspects. Authentication, recall management, and those kinds of things are fairly high on people's agendas because they cost a lot of money if you get it wrong. You know, Ganeri knows, you know, one of the issues that come out with the Amazon kick a lot of the time is, are you selling real products? I mean, and they make huge efforts and great strenuous efforts to ensure that they do, but it's a huge marketplace and it's difficult to always do that. So the levels of new technologies that are coming in, even to not just the packaging, but authenticate the product by looking at the surface of the product and things like that are coming online, and we'll be developing new ways to authenticate products even more deeply than just using the packaging.
So more on the authentication you were expecting. Very interesting. Let's look at
and supply chain management, really.
Yeah, and that too. Yeah,
that's where we'd like to see things happening, because we believe that's got some fundamental issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah, no, definitely. Maybe serialized QR codes can support with that, because of course, if you do want to have identification of singular products in terms of authentication, and again, supply chain or logistics or traceability, then you do need a serialized QR code. So what's the level of interest in serialized QR codes? And we've seen a big increase here. We can see here 1 being not very interested at all, by the way, and 5 being very interested. Of course, we can see here that there is high interest in the concept. Seems that 17.2% are neutral about it, number 3, and a very limited negative interest, if you could put it that way. What do you think, Craig? What is the potential advantages of serialized QR codes? What are people seeing here?
Well, I think the fact of having, batch of one, essentially, every product is unique, unlocks a huge number of benefits. And it's a lot of benefits that people don't realize. Even within the factory, having a serialized QR code gives you the best manufacturing control process you can have. You've suddenly now got the best real-time clock in your factory, so you know when the line stopped and started and when there's been problems and certain. It increases the power of things like recalls. Serialized codes, it means that, if you know exactly when a problem happened, instead of recalling 10 or 20,000, you might recall 4. Because actually, when the problem happened. So let's be safe and recall the one before. Let's recall the one where we know the problem was, and let's recall a couple afterwards because we know it was solved afterwards. So it just gives you this whole, orders of magnitude in a much more powerful control of your system. And back to what Andrew was saying about logistics, again, the serialized capability there gives everybody in logistics and distribution again a much better potential outcome, much more use cases that they can interact with. So it really does turbocharge any program if you've got that level of granularity. It's hugely powerful.
Definitely. And it even opens up to promotional things such as instant win or loyalty programs as well. And also, if we talk about recycling, we can look at deposit return because we're talking about individual, as you say, batch of one, which I think is really interesting as well. Anybody else want to talk about serialization? Ali, I don't know whether you're nodding or just smiling.
I'm just smiling.
Okay.
People are there. It depends on the use case, really, on why you want to actually use codification in the first place. If you want transactional data at a batch of one level, then you're probably better off with serial. But in my experience, in my personal experience, I can only say that 80% to 90% of all use cases that we could possibly think of using battery call identification, supply chain instability, engagement can happen without serialized codes. It's that when you really want to get that 1%, then you need serialized codes to actually come in place. You mentioned deposit return. Deposit return, in my personal opinion, does not really need serialized code. You don't need a batch of one. You could probably do it with generic batch level codes or even higher than that.
Depending on how your system works, absolutely.
Depending on how the system works, yeah.
Perfect. All right. So people who are planning a connected packaging campaign in 2024, 88.4% say yes. So this is higher than 2023. So this is good. So not only did we have a high percentage of people doing so in 2023, they are then planning a higher rate, again, planning for 2024. So this is very positive. I think, Andrew, you might have some comments around this.
For sure, I it's a very encouraging number. The word that worries me slightly is its campaign. I mean, we're striving to see a much more broad rollout of connected packaging technologies. Campaigns are great. Campaigns show off the technology to great advantage. There have been big campaigns, small campaigns, highly targeted campaigns, very broad campaigns. What we want to see in the next steps are people rolling out things like, for example, Kellogg's are doing with the NaviLens thing, which is sort of going across all of its cereal ranges. And we want to see that these things, or show that these things are scalable and cost effective at scale. So it's not just about always being a campaign-led thing. That seems to have been the characterization of this type of technology for the last decade. And whilst things have got a lot bigger, and we've got things in apparel doing a lot more generic stuff, we want to see not just campaigns. We want to see bigger, better, larger rollouts of the technology. But coming back to where we were with this particular slide, yeah, great, isn't it? I mean, and I think that you know, even if the figures are slight, well, they're better than 2023, but you had a much larger sampling, so that's very encouraging that the sampling is strong on that.
Definitely, because just to remind everyone, there was 3 times the number of respondents in this one than there was the previous year. So absolutely, Andrew, it means that there is a much higher number. And also, I think if you have more people who tried it, yet more people going to repeat it, it is doing from what you're saying, Andrew, which is moving from that kind of campaign or the pilot, which I think Craig mentioned earlier, that kind of pilot mentality or testing or campaign, moving into that kind of always on or long-term strategy. We're talking about a deployment rather than that campaign. But I think that's a process and a system.
I'd be interested to hear what other members of the panel think about that.
I would agree, Andrew. I mean, it's nice to compare this slide to the level of investment slide. So, but again, even at, you know, sort of $80,000, that's still a you know, a campaign. It's something that, so they're trialing it in a much bigger way for a longer period or across more products. Fantastic. That's all good stuff. It's moving things in the right direction. But we need to see more of this as business as usual. You know, as you talk about, you know, the always on. It's part of the business. That's something they do. I mean, you look at what Amazon's doing with transparency, for example, you know, again, that's rolling out. There's some really nice initiatives out there that people then just get to expect, you know, that they understand what it's for, and it's always there. There's nothing worse sometimes than a QR code appearing and then disappearing, because people go, well, I used to scan that and it's not there anymore. And you know, so this is one of the key things for me is turning it from, you know, well, we're going to do it for 3 months in this geography, to say, no, it's just something we do as a matter of course.
Gunnery, you know, mentioned of Amazon there. Definitely, you've got some comments here. So
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with Craig and Andrew for apparently. So, I mean, keep in mind that the average B2C company spends 5 to 10% of their revenue, global annual revenue, for marketing, and we're talking about 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 for connected pack. Considering what we heard at the latest AIPIA, where a dollar spent on connected packaging is a multiple versus the dollar spent on, you know, digital marketing like banners, websites. So again, it comes back to the ongoing discussion we have as an industry, education and consultation of brands. I think that we still need to do a better job of educating brands and sharing the insights. I think this is great to read, but as Andrew said, I think, again, we need to educate them on so many levels. Ali mentioned his point on serialization. I would disagree to a certain point, because what we see is many brands already have some sort of variable data printing in their production size, right? To make sure the right ice cream is the right package. So you could use the very same devices set up for inline coding and marking with laser and inkjet to serialize. And that immediately would help you to, you know, keep doing what you do successfully on a production line, talking about digital twins, AI improvements for manufacturing, NFTs, traceability, but also get that consumer engagement on a whole new level, because now you know this is a product made initially for the UK. How comes it's being sold through the gray market in France, for example, right? So there's so much data that you get through serialization. Yes, it does require a certain additional effort and potential cost, but again, if you put that in perspective, that brands spend for so many things, and all the value that Andrew also mentioned for an ongoing relationship building with customers, it's peanuts, to be honest. And we see that one recall, one big counterfeiting issue will cost you multiple of any dollar you might spend on connected packaging, long-term engagement with your brands, and give consumers, I mean, we all are consumers. I don't want to see a product with a QR code and then disappear and I don't know what it is. Like, you know, try to build it. We're not asking for a new game or extensive experience, but give people a chance to check for gluten-free, halal, kosher, whatever, right? Give people more information available, and then they will get used to engage with you, sharing proactively their data and all that stuff. So there's so much opportunity, but it all gets back to the fact that there seems to be a missing point on so many levels on the customer side in regards of the brands on education.
Ali, anything to add? No, no problem. We can move to a quick question, actually. So we've got a question here from Ian Schofield. Again, thank you, Ian. Many companies in the middle in the middle of end-to-end LCAs, which take 8 months to 18 months, put connected in the mix, we will need carbon measuring, as brands need to be aware of the impact. Anybody know the impact? Good or bad mixture, facts are needed and certified outside of what we believe are the wins. I open that up to the panel. Does anyone have a comment on that?
Yeah, I'll comment. Again, one of the things that's what we're seeing with with LCAs is there's a lot of averages going on. So okay, what's the average impact of, for example, delivering a kilo of this from here to there, and of course there is a lot of sort of generalization, and for me it doesn't then incentivize anybody to improve the outcome, because you're sort of using an average, and if you get much better or much worse at certain things, it doesn't impact it. I think having the granularity of connected packaging, again, all the way through the supply chain, even from material producers up into the factory and back out of the factory, I think just gives a lot more detail, a lot more of a sort of granular approach to it. So I think personally, I think that there's some benefits there. There is, of course, the challenge of creating much more data, and you've got to use the data in the right way, of course. And are you just creating another huge team to analyze more detail? But I think if it's done properly, personally, I think it's a positive thing. Or certainly the tools are there to make it a positive thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Craig. Another quick question. This one is around spoofing or quishing when QR codes are scanned. Do you think that the massive use of QR codes will exacerbate the following problem? QRs with a malicious URL or a link leading to a very fraudulent or unfriendly service. Does anyone have a comment there?
Yeah, maybe just on a very high level, because it's a very complex topic. So first of all, I think every problem is a problem too much. But what we see at Amazon in our transparency program is that actually simplicity by having something is better than nothing. So it's a good start without having to be scared. And the data that we have shows that it's working well, and the reasons to be too concerned are not actually that high. However, I think everybody in this panel and also the whole industry, there are solutions for multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, as most people refer to. So you can easily protect a QR code or any other technology with an added layer that makes it hard to almost impossible, to do those harmful actions. So I think, again, it depends on your brand. If you're starting and you're in a field where it might not be obvious that you get, hacked, or your QR code might be misused, you can start something simple to at least get going without having to shoot with two big guns on small targets. So, however, if you feel like you need more added protection, I think there are great solutions that can easily add that protective layer on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ali, I think you were going to answer something there.
I completely agree with Granero. Basically, yes, you will have a problem, but how do you control the problem will lead to new innovations, need to the industry coming together, especially when you talk about spoofing or quishing. That means the point of vulnerability is basically the network, not when you actually apply the code. Or, for example, if an agency is applying code and they're using their own servers, it's up to the security of the agency or the server that they're using, or on the security of the network on which the customer is actually scanning the code. So if you're on an unsecured network scanning a code, you have bigger problems, my friend, than spoofing and squishing, because all of your other data is actually going somewhere else as well. So it really comes down to security of the network, not actually the spoofing of the code itself. Yeah. Unless, of course, you have digital LCD panels and that someone can hack them, which is way far from where we are.
Yeah.
And at the risk of going to barcode geek mode, one of the challenges you've got is, of course, we're all taught, corporately and personally, to look at a URL, because actually that can tell you, does it sound right? Does it, has it got the right sort of structure? The problem is if you put in a really long structure into your URL, it's almost impossible to print as a QR code because it makes the QR code too big. So the challenge is, of course, everybody's sort of going, well, I would like a really nice short URL because it makes it really, easy for the QR. So it is a balance. I think back to what Ali and Guneri both said, it's about the system. It's about interconnectivity. The banking system works. I always laugh because people have holograms on their credit cards. Nobody knows what they are. you know that your card's genuine because it works and the system works. So it's all about that, making sure that you're operating in the right space. It's, of course, there's still going to be threats, but you just have to sort of work with different partners in an unconnected ecosystem to try and reduce that threat.
Absolutely, and there are some other solutions, fingerprinting, secure QR codes. There are solutions, lava fingerprinting, etc., that are out there as well. Is that necessary for what you're doing as well? That's something else to look at. You know, it depends on also what you're doing. Andrew, I think you want to mention something here.
Well, I was just going to finish off by saying, you know, what Gunneri said was absolutely right. You know, there are solutions to all these problems depending on how much level of complexity you want to take and how much you want to spend on it. For example, you know, one or two of the companies that we have in membership offer you a thing where you have a QR code that you can see and a QR code that you can't see. So, but they both have to be read to authenticate the product. But, you know, that's adding levels of complexity to it that maybe some people find too difficult. I think what Gunneri said was absolutely right. Most of the time, don't get stressed about it because most of it works really well. If you really need to look at those levels of complexity, then you've got to come and talk to people like Craig and people like me to actually, you know, take you to the next level, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. With
Even people like you, Jenny. Yeah,
even people like us, Andrew. Yeah, 100%. There are solutions out there, and you know, we've been doing QR code campaigns for 8 years. We've run thousands and thousands and millions of scans, and we haven't come across that problem. That's not to say it isn't a problem, but there are lots of solutions to that problem. All right, so moving on. Do we think that connected packaging will be increasingly important to the packaging industry in the next 12 months and beyond? 80.4% say yes. 80.4%, I should say, sorry, say yes. And the reasons for that rising importance, you can see here: access to valuable data and insights, encouraging customer loyalty. It's really interesting there, that one. I think especially when you think about loyalty programs, if it is a loyalty program, it needs to be always on, just going back to our campaign versus long-term strategy. A sustainable way to connect with and educate consumers, gamification being up there as well, main route for communicating with customers. I think that's really interesting as well. So again, I think somebody, I don't remember who on the panel, said, you know, consumers are going to come to expect it. I think maybe it was you, Craig, when you said, you know, don't have it, remove it, have it, remove it. And I think, Gunneri, you were agreeing with that as well. I think consumers expect to understand better their products. They expect to have more information about their products. Where did this come from? What is the recycling or the sustainability credentials of this piece of packaging or whatever it might be? There is now expectation that goes into that information and recycling instructions, and then legislation changes is there as well, which of course is important as well. Any comments on this particular slide? If not, it's fine. I shall move on quickly. And what I think is probably interesting is, of course, that
again, I think what's interesting is I think there'll be a number of, as the number of use cases develop and we start to see more and more success stories for the use of things. I think again that will increase and actually there'll be a number of outcomes that people haven't completely understood. I mean, it's interesting looking at things like allergies. Okay, allergies are a very, very serious topic, but actually we're seeing some other things where things like has it got the right sugar level in it? So for example, if
Craig is
sugar product. Hold on, did you lose me? I was saying
a little bit, but yeah,
I'm sorry about that.
Sugar content, I think, and the ingredients.
Yeah. So if you're buying a product that you think's got full sugar content and you're conscious because you're maybe diabetic, again, is it full sugar or is the product that's actually in there in the wrong packaging? So there's all these other really subtle outcomes that we're going to really start to see. And I think, again, the sustainability post-consumer thing, it was nice to see recycling instructions. Again, the confusion between compostable and not recyclable and all these other things.
Yeah.
What you do with your product. And I think not just recycling, but I think reuse is going to be a really big area because that's even better. It gives a better outcome than recycling because you don't have to do anything with it, just reuse it. So I think all of these things are really going to start emerging.
Yeah, definitely. The people who don't believe it's going to be necessary for the future, again, 19.6% massively surprised me. Of that, you can see the breakdown. So those percentages are of that 19.6%. So, for example, customers don't really use it. It's a fad. It's expensive, in my opinion. It doesn't work. It's pretty it's pretty even when you look at really the percentages there. Very, very interesting. Of course, as we've seen, this is something that is coming. So the digital product passport, the legislation, this is coming. So whether or not you think it works, it's going to be something that's going to be a legal requirement to have the additional information on your packaging, which is interesting. We discussed expensive and complexity, and I think that's due to education. I think, Andrew, you mentioned that as well. Really, yeah, go on.
I just think it's a wonderful thing. In my opinion, it doesn't work. I wonder what bit of the packaging world they're living in, frankly. I mean, because there are lots of examples of how it works. Whether you don't like it or not, that's your right. But don't tell me it doesn't work, because it does, you know?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's interesting, Andrew, just to add to that, I spent 4 days at the GS1 Global Conference last week, and one of the things that was really interesting and really refreshing to hear about is not just about producing the codes, but there was a big focus on the infrastructure to make sure that we can read them, both in the retailers and consumers and all these other things. So actually, it's about making that whole system more robust. So yeah, absolutely, of course it works. We've been doing machine readable codes for 20 years, serialized machine readable codes for 20 years plus. They do work, but it's again making sure that that whole system works effectively.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe just to add one from our e-commerce perspective. So, with the shift to e-commerce, especially through COVID, but it's not going to go away, hopefully. You're losing the point of sale, right? As a brand, you have been spending money to make the shelf looking well and the experience at the grocery store. So you're losing that because people are not spending the same time as pre-COVID in your grocery store. Plus, I think one thing that it's hard for me to understand is we're talking about new generations growing up with mobile only attitude, right? Like they're not watching TV. They're not probably going to Google a lot. They're going to go with an AI assistant or whatever, and they're going to go through social media and all these channels. So if you believe it's a fad which will pass or it doesn't work, well, it's probably because you're not doing it right. You might not have the right partners that have educated you to create the awareness. I would assume you're spending money on SEO, on banners and all that stuff. Does it work? Right? But you do it because you feel like, oh, that's one part of the marketing strategy. And I think consumer engagement as a point in packaging is at that very point, is you will lose out on all the new generations growing up now with their phone in their hands if you're not able to connect with them and give them added values for the products.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I just wanted to put on there as well, in terms of customers don't really use it. Well, is that because you put the QR code somewhere that nobody's seen? Is that because you've not promoted it? Is that because actually nobody knows that there's a QR code there? So is that more really about the way your design of the campaign is? And there's good case studies and there's bad case studies. There's case studies where people have put the QR code too small. If it's smaller than 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre, then actually phones can't read that very well. If you print without a good between the two colours, Craig, help me out. What's the word here?
Contrast.
Thank you. Between the two colours, then that might be a problem. If you design the QR code to be too fancy, then the QR code can't be recognised. So again, there are lots of things in terms of the design that need to be thought about, placement and everything else. So really, really important things that we see there as well. I'm going to rush us through because we haven't come to the end. We're too talkative. But this is good. Connected packaging, is it attractive to help improve sustainability credentials of your company? 77.6 said yes. So I think that's really, really interesting in terms of what the use is and where we should be looking to promote sustainability credentials. Really interesting there. I'm going to move to our next as well, which is how much do you plan to increase your digital marketing spend in the year 2024? 94.7% of respondents are going to increase. So that's really high. How are they going to increase it? You can see here by numbers, the digital marketing increase here as well. Again, very, very attractive here in terms of positivity towards this. I'm just going to go through our last and we can open any final conversation. How important will connected packaging be to your business? Again, 1 being not very important, 10 being very important. You can see the scale there, 7s, 8s, 9s and 10s being the highest. So this, I think, is very, very positive in terms of the perception of brands. Do they think this is going to be important for their business? Yes, they do. Again, I think really, really, really interesting here and very positive. So I've taken us through here very quickly. Any final comments and areas that the panel want to bring here? Anything surprising? Anything in particular, especially over those last questions that we've not managed to spend a lot of time on? Anything there you want to comment?
I think from my side, it's first of all, great effort. I mean, huge work from you and your team, Jenny. I think this is a much needed resource that we finally have to get a better sense for the brands. But to me, a lot of the results are very obvious because we've been in this industry for many years, and again, there's huge interest. There's so much upside with all the things: serialization, brand protection, consumer engagement. But also, there's so much work left for us to do still on educating, sharing information, connecting better within the industry, and collaborating on a new level to tackle these. I don't know how it works. It doesn't work. All these misconceptions on that is existing. So great to know that there's good progress and uplift, but there's also a lot of work ahead of us to even improve these.
Agreed. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just add, I think it's reassuring. I'd like to see it accelerating again. The levels of investment, it's great to see the direction of travel, but I think it needs to speed up significantly. Again, looking at the numbers, it looks like there's a number of companies there that are significantly, turning this into an always-on type of approach. But we need to move much more quickly to really gain the benefits as early as possible. And there are some huge benefits. Sustainability is an area where I think there's some huge benefits. So it would be really nice to see that accelerate without the need for legislation coming in.
Yeah, completely.
Just to add very quickly, Jenny, I mean, all of the things that Guneri and Craig just said, absolutely. I'm particularly pleased by that slide on the sustainability thing, because when we first started, we were part of the problem, not part of the solution. And in fact, we are part of the solution if we're used in the right way. And the fact that people are recognizing that is very encouraging and could actually help us develop the business across a much broader scope.
Definitely. Sustainability coming up there, and we've done so many campaigns around sustainability communication and programs. It's a massive growth that we see as well. Ali, anything from your side to add?
I would like to say we do like to talk about sustainability and how we can actually use that, but we have to understand that when you talk about sustainability, there's a cost of adding all of this and showing sustainability data. We need to educate our consumers that are they willing to pay the cost today? Most of them, depending upon the product line, are not. If I tell you this is a more sustainable product, it costs you $10 more, and this is a regular product, based on consumer behavior from what we know, depending upon the consumer base, it matters what product it is. So while it's all very nice in certain industries, sustainability is the catchphrase because you want to have more sustainable industries. But are we quite there yet in terms of consumer behavior? Because I would really like to approach all of connected packaging and our approach in a relative, realistic manner. We are still a ways away. Education is needed, market focus is needed, and the industry needs to come together for this to happen.
Definitely, and I think connected packaging really allows us to be able to understand that, of the people perhaps spending the extra money, because some people do, who are those people and why? And of the people who are not perhaps, well, why is that? And again, this is a communication channel. So if there is something that is happening or changing because the packaging is more sustainable, or because we want to inform people where things should be recycled or returned to, or how to reuse it, all of that, then, you know, connected packaging is a fantastic way to be able to educate those customers, those consumers, and allow them to be able to understand more. You know, I see so much happening in the sustainability world, and I sat on a conference at the end of last year, and there were so many different plans, but there was a lot of behavior change that those plans needed for consumers. But if we don't tell those consumers what we want them to do, then how do we expect that consumer behavior change to happen? Which I thought was really kind of impactful. You know, so much going on in terms of plans, but actually no way of being able to educate the consumer that you want them to make those changes. So again, I think that's something where connected packaging can really help. So we've come to the end. We've run out of time, but I think we've had some fantastic discussions. So a massive thank you to all of you, to Ali, to Craig, to Gunari, to Andrew. Thank you so much for joining me in revealing these results. You can see on the screen 2 QR codes, of course. One to be able to download the packaging report, so the actual answers to the survey itself, and the second, of course, to check out our events. As I mentioned, the next event coming up in March is around design, placement, and QR code design education. So we're really inviting design agencies to be able to come on board and be part of that. And then, you know, let's take the real positives out of here. There's a lot of great things happening in connected packaging. There's a lot of different changes in sentiment, but I think there's still a big space in education. So we're going to do our part where we can to educate the industry around connected packaging and all the fantastic benefits that there are. Big thank you to you all, and I wish you all a good rest of the day. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.